Welcome back to the Hearthstone European Grandmasters. Just a short break there just to make sure the players are good to go, and they are, or at least that's what they told us. Warma versus Swidz we have coming up for our match number 2 of the day. Just another reminder, we do only have 4 matches planned for today, and then Americas will roll up after us, of course. But back to it here. The Warriors are banned out, both players bringing Demon Hunter, but then we have Rogue Druid on one side and Mage Priest on another. So although I mentioned at the start of the show, Saul, that Europe, I don't want to use the word boring, but feels like they've just submitted just the same again, week in, week out. We are still seeing differences of lineups here. Yep. 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 Well, I didn't hear you, Saul, because you're muted, and even me with that joke won't actually make sense because you wouldn't have heard what Saul said. But anyway, doesn't matter what Saul said. It was unimportant because he was giving me grief. Swidz versus Warma in a game number 1, and it is going to be Demon Hunter Mirror. Sottle, you back with me?
Yeah. Essentially, something. Okay. Raven sucks. That's basically what it was. Yep. You can all figure it out.
Saul says something a lot, doesn't he? It's like 2 for 2 matches now.
That was the point! Oh, come on.
Oh, was it? Oh, it should have been funnier than that. I would have got it. Back into this match now. The pretty good curve here for Swidz, or at least a good opening. I'm not one to really like keeping hold of those 5 drops when there's a lot more to dig for in this list, but does look like a great opening, and sometimes that can be enough in this matchup.
Yeah, it's a pretty tricky matchup, honestly, because sometimes you can stick early board and actually get so much damage through early by just, playing on curve 1, 2, 3 and then start forcing minion damage. However, that entire strategy gets completely blown up by one Shard Shatter Mystic on the other side of the board, right? If they're able to get a Soul Fragment into their deck early. So you never quite know, in my experience, like whether to mulligan for a very aggressive curve or mulligan for the hand that beats the aggressive curve and then starts dealing damage with weapons after, right? Like how badly do you want that early curve with 1-3 into Panthera, into One Maker and whatever else?
Personally, I like it a lot because it would generally forces them to have exactly Spirit Jailer to be able to, I guess Soul Shear as well in this build. Both players are in the same list.
Yeah.
But, it requires them to have like one of a couple of cards in time to be able to then also on-curve Shard Shatter you. So I think this is generally pretty good and pretty acceptable.
Swidz, of course, fresh off a very strong performance at the weekend in Masters Tour Montreal, showing up big time when it gets to the larger field outside of Grandmasters. And I will continue to say that I think he is a much improved player, or rather, it would be more appropriate to say he's starting to show more of the player he is, because I think I had a lot of questions about his play in 2019 GM, and I also feel like he looked a bit nervous and uncomfortable, but really does seem to be coming into his own now as a Grandmaster, representing France as so many others are.
Yeah, and even this mana burn now actually from Swidz, it's going to put a bit of a lock on what Warma wanted to do. I think especially with 2 Blade Dance in hand, he wanted to get this Marrow Slicer cooking and also have a setup for the Glaive-bound Adept, which just simply isn't there anymore. So maybe Swidz doesn't actually even realize how good that mana burn was for him that turn, honestly. Not even disrupting 1 turn, but 2. Look at the aggression, Saul. I love it.
Yeah, huge amount of damage going through already.
I do think the trade could be good because of a potential Blade Dance. It does make the Blade Dance a little bit more difficult to manage. Although I guess it's...
I grow impatient.
It plays around quite a lot of things, right? It plays around Soul Shear, it plays around Activator into Shard Shatter. There's quite a lot of things that punish you for leaving this 2-2 up.
With no Marrow Slicer that Swidz just, forced Warma out of last turn, this 5/5 is actually quite hard to kill, so I think you should keep it hard to kill, right? Which is what Swidz is doing with this trade. I actually like this a lot. And this is it, right? I was talking, like, again, not only the the turn of the Marrow Slicer, but these 2 Shard Shatters are just doing nothing either, at least for now. Might end up being some use very shortly, now that he has gone for the Marrow Slicer, but still. Just a much delayed game now because of that mana burn from Swidz. Pretty big deal.
Warma already. Deep consideration. 2 blade dances in hand. Already thinking about where this damage goes now.
Demons? Demons.
It has to be face, right? It has to be. On turn 5, you can't expect the board to get much wider than 1 to 2 minions. So Blade Dance is always insane next turn, or it's the same, except you got to push 5 more damage. Yeah, you took more damage, but that shouldn't really matter. I do like the decision for Warma. He has so much removal available to him next turn that it should be fine.
Yes, I agree. I think Warma spent that entire time basically going through every combination of multiple minions that he could think of that turn, whether there were punishes available, couldn't find one that he was particularly concerned about, and then just swung his damage face, which is absolutely the right response there, I think. Swidz, from his perspective, unactivated right now, no soul fragments left remaining in deck. One was drawn, one was consumed. So now he's just playing a 3-mana Bloodthorn Raptor from the left to unlock that Skull of Gul'dan, so he can now rip that on curve on the next turn. He knows he's getting Blade Danced here. He knows this was happening. He's okay with it.
That's it, and that's the thing, right? It's just not only did it open up the Skull, but you just don't want to play a 5/5 that does nothing's going to die for free next turn, right? So it just forces out the Shard Chatter there, but it does mean now that Warma is starting to pile on this pressure a little bit.
Certainly is. Again, decisions with the weapon swings. I think this is one of the biggest things with Soul Demon Hunter. I think 2 things really separate like average players with this deck from real top players. One of them is the weapon management, knowing exactly when and where to swing, and the other is soul fragment management, right? Because in some situations, it's correct not to put fragments in your deck so that you don't draw them, and you can guarantee that they're in there later when you really need them for Sociologist or whatever else. So I really do like that Warma is taking his time here with what look like fairly straightforward decisions, because I do think the weapon management is one of the biggest things that you have to get right.
Yeah, you can either gain or lose a ton of damage in the game if you mess that up. If you overcommit or undercommit, either way. Here, though, is a very tricky turn. Outra's been picked up along with that Soul Shade, does just kill the Adept very easily, but that's kind of all it does, whereas he could hold off and maybe set up some kind of Twin Slice in the near future instead.
Yeah, it does involve getting rid of a Blade Dance from his hand first as well, though, right? Which doesn't seem super likely to happen over the coming turns right now.
It's tough, like what?
He can just Hero Power to activate Gladebound and just call that a Hearthstone turn, which it certainly is. But Altruist does work here, and it does present a must-kill threat on the board that Swidz might be encouraged to throw damage into, which I think is very much to Warma's interest right now.
And honestly, with shuffling the extra soul fragments into the deck, isn't too bad when you're on 10 health. I think I want those soul fragments to be drawn very soon.
Agreed.
And it's enough that they're probably not going to all be back-to-back drawn, so this Shard Chatter doesn't work next turn. So yeah, I actually think I like this overall.
Because now Swidz has to answer this Altruist. If he doesn't, he dies. And I don't mean answer, like, Consume Magic will not be good enough here. He cannot take the 4 damage from it. So that could potentially force Swidz off Skull here again. He does currently have a guaranteed answer to it, but Skull is Skull. Like, how long can you possibly delay it here?
I think you found out in testing Subtle that I'm a huge fan of just press the button if you have it. Outcast in not only this matchup, but just with this deck in general. Oh, it can open up so many good turns. He needs like a Blade Dance and a damage card for like a weapon card, and he's just cleaned this away, no problem.
Yeah. Or Aldraki Warblades and some damage to stack on top of that as well, so he can start racing more effectively, potentially leave the Ultra.
There's multiple combinations of good cards you can get. There's Aldraki. And did he get Blade Dance? He didn't get Blade Dance, but still not too bad.
Okay. So he's going to consume it and go face.
Oh, okay.
I like this. This game very likely only has one turn in it, right? So there's no real reason to waste this damage into the minion.
Either way, that is going to be the game, though, because Twin Slice is one heck of a card. Going to make up for a ton of damage. Has the Gladebound, has the lapidary. It doesn't really matter which one he chooses. That's going to be the game. But I do think Swidz was correct in going for that skull for the best potential outcome there. Warma, though, takes game number 1.
Yeah, very, very clean. And we talked about how much pressure Warma was finding himself under in the early game. When the original lapidary came down, it looked like he was the player under pressure, but just took a couple of slow and considered turns, reacted to the situation appropriately, and importantly, did not accept that he was the player on the back foot at any point. He stopped, he thought about it, he said, there's a 5-5 on the board, I don't care. My opponent has a face, I have damage. Those two things are going together, and then I'll blade dance this away on the next turn, because either way, you take 5 more damage from it, whether you swing into it or not. So Warma recognizing there to go face in that position is the only real thing that enabled him to be able to come back from a slightly slower start where Swidz was off to the races early.
Yeah, especially in that matchup. The game can just flip in one turn. You have one slightly slower turn than your opponent, even if you were ahead on damage or anything, and it all just fades away very, very quickly. So a close one to start off that match. We are going to go to a quick break while we get them ready for game number 2, though. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I would rather be the funniest person in the room at this very moment. Long term it would be better to be the smartest, but it's just about the moment.
Funniest person in the room. Funniest?
I would rather be the most funniest person in the room.
I'd probably rather be the most intelligent person. Actually, if you're the most intelligent person in the room, you're in the wrong room. That's what they say.
If you're the most intelligent person in the room, then you're probably also going to be very sad. But if you're the funniest person in the room, then you're going to make everybody laugh and everybody's going to have a great time. So I'd rather have that.
Yeah, I'd still rather be the most intelligent and the most funny person in the room.
I think other people are more funny than me, and I would rather be just the smartest guy there, and if we play a game, I would rather just outplay them.
Intelligence is very nice, but happiness is more important, and I think also actually with happiness or with a lot of intelligence comes together as well.
I think I'm both, so... That's a nice answer.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Hearthstone Grandmasters European region. We are going to continue our matchup between Warma and Swidz. But before we do, just have a quick announcement. We will not be doing match number 3 today, which is Bunny Hopper versus Blythe, because unfortunately Bunny Hopper's not feeling very well today and he won't be able to play. We'll update you with some more information when we have it, but just letting you know right now that match 3 will not be played out. So after this match, we will just be moving on to our match number 4 of the day. So for once, we'll know what it feels like to be casting APAC this season in terms of time at least. So we'll be moving on with this game. Warma versus Swidz in game number 2, Sol.
Yeah, we wish Bunny all the best, of course. Hope he is feels better soon, and we can get him back on stream, entertaining the masses as always. But we have a very entertaining game 1 between Warma and Swidz here with that Demon Hunter mirror. And Warma picking up the win in the mirror match is a very big deal for him because they are very dynamic lineups, very, very different from each other. We did talk a little bit about the deck not involved for Swidz, but his builds of the decks in typical Swidz fashion are kind of universally pretty interesting. With his Rogue, for example, having that Faceless Corruptor tech, which is not the first time we've seen that from him either. Not a card that we're really seeing anyone else go to, but he is playing what it can, I guess, be best described as a greedy version of the list, because there's a lot of versions now that top out at 3. There's some versions that top out at 4, with the 4 being Vendetta. But Swidz not only has Faceless Corruptor in there, but Flick as well on top of everything else. So it does have the potential to draw some slower curves with that. But before we get to any of it, he is back on the bus now with this Demon Hunter up against the Priest.
Yeah, and however much I complain and moan about Priest just in general, but I do think, at least for casting, is one of the more interesting matchups this for Demon Hunter and for Priest, because I still think it's undecided, at least on the Priest side, on how to go about winning this game or winning this matchup. And we do see some players take different routes, and I know you're a big fan of just the Outlast approach of saying just kill any minions they make, just stay healthy, keep the removal high for Priest, and then you just burn them out of all their damage. But I know some players do think it is a bit more of a tempo-focused game that you should try and win as early as you can by sticking a big board.
Yeah, I think it is list-dependent. I am a fan of the Outlast approach, as you said. Swidz here, a fan of the Outcast approach, as he holds onto the Skull of Gul'dan in his opening hand. But I do think it's list-dependent as well, because, for example, Warma's deck has double Wild Pyromancer in it. So it's a very anti-aggro build, has the opportunity for big swings of health with Wild Pyromancer Apotheosis, for example, is able to clear some of these early minion boards if they do come down very, very efficiently. So I think this particular build has a very, very good chance of playing that strategy. But as with always in Hearthstone, like, you can make general rules and bullet points for yourself, but that can all go out the window, and you might just have to play a matchup completely differently, right? Like, look at the example that we just saw from APAC, where the Demon Hunter got hold of Priest Galakron and then outvalued and outboarded the Priest as Demon Hunter to essentially just win a battle of value. Like, these situations come up, and you have to adapt to them, and you can have a general rule on how you think the matchup is going to pan out, but you have to take each game as it comes.
We do see already Swidz going off like lightning on turn 3, just having that Aldrachi Warblade equipped and just straight away aiming that to face, not thinking about holding it, not thinking about trading it with the minion just in case there's potentially just I just forgot the name of the card now, a Raised Dead available or anything like that. So yeah, just gonna chuck 2 damage to face, even though 2 damage to face doesn't feel very permanent in this matchup. I do think it is important that Swidz, with that Skull Keep, have a more plan to like 1-2 punch Warma, as opposed to chip damage throughout the whole game to eventually win.
Yeah, I think already with this hand and this opening and this curve from Warma, he's probably thinking he can certainly have a good go at the tempo plan right now, right? He has a very aggressive curve. He's played a 5/5 on turn 3. He's dealing damage, and he's just drawn Murozond, which is very multifunctional in this matchup. It can be used to steal healing from the opponent if they mess up with their Aldrachi Warblades and hand you a bunch of healing. But it can also just be used to steal damage, right? If they're playing Twin Slices or Marrow Slicer or anything like that in the late game, you can use that to just force that damage straight back at them with the Murozond. So it's very possible here that Warma might just go digging for an Apotheosis exactly and slam it right now for a giant minion that's just connecting face for 1,000,000 damage. Love this.
Yeah, and this is very much one of the reasons I do like Murozond played a little bit more aggressively, actually, in this matchup, is because what you've got to remember is it's all the stuff your opponent did and an 8/8. And we saw the ease in which Blade Dance just dealt with the board for Swidz last game, and how easy Warma cleaned that up. It's a bit harder to do if your minions have 8 health. That's way more of an ask. So yeah, I do like that overall, but It was cleaned up there from Swidz, pretty nicely, honestly, but Swidz now down on 14 health. Not really any access to healing. If Warma wins this board one more time, this is going to look a little bit rough.
It is, but now it's starting to look slightly more difficult to win the board. That Consume Magic pickup with the Skull now outcasted on the far left, second Shard Shatter, so many ways to go about taking control of this board state.
Yeah, just like Consume Magic, swing, and then just have the Glaive Bound looks insane here. Clean the board up, put more damage to the face. Looks very powerful. Still draw cards.
It's worth thinking about Warma's Apotheosis usage on the previous turn because, you know, while I said he can just jam it right now, I wasn't specific on which minion it went on. I think it's pretty instinctual and pretty reasonable in this matchup to just make the one biggest minion that you can, but you can see the punish for it, right? It was just a single Shard Shatter Mystic coming down, just messed up his entire board state at that point. Something to think about.
It's tough, right? Because if you do it the other way, then Blade Dance just demolishes you as well. So I think it is you pick one you feel is right at the time and just hope they don't have the right shaped removal to deal with it.
Oh, so much weapon damage going into minions here, though, and that's the thing, is this early tempo start is serving multiple purposes here for Warma. Is not only has he pushed a bunch of damage and been aggressive in the early game, he's also healing every time that Swidz has to send damage into a minion to try and get the board state back.
Yeah, and that even that was...
All right, now we'll know. This is the decision point. This is the decision point, Raven. Skeletal Dragon, enormous taunt for defense. Plague Proto Drake or Alex Straza, both much, much more aggressive options. I guess Alex Straza could be picked up with half an eye on defense as well in this position. I guess it shouldn't be quite so hard to categorize it, yeah.
Yeah, because Swidz can heal, which makes Alex Straza potentially also like double aggressive approach, gets an 8/8 that could then drop him back down. But also he can use it to heal himself if he gets pushed low. So yeah, I think Alex is probably just the flexible choice. Here though, I think Swidz does need to look at this skull, get it cast now. At worst, he just trades the 3/2 into the worm and sort of gives the turn over to Warma. But then the turn after, Swidz should have a ton of options with the post skull cards.
Yeah, no Elucia in Warma's list, which is always something to consider in this matchup. Sometimes when you're playing against an Elucia deck, you will play Skull later, so that you have 2 or 3 mana left over at the end to be able to play any of the discounted cards that you draw. If you draw some of the more expensive ones, you have to spend 2 on them, you can still end up playing them. Because the worst thing you can do in an Elucia matchup is just pass turn back to your opponent with a bunch of heavily discounted cards in your hands. But nothing here to worry about for Swidz. Card is not in the deck for Warma.
Okay. Interesting. There were multiple... Well, I mean, the question was whether he even played the skull in the first place. But with that trade, I actually wondered whether he was going to swing pre-weapon, kill the 5/3, then equip the Marrow Slicer, and then just go face with the 3/2 and stick the minion again.
Let me change your mind.
Oh. No further questions about where Warma's head is at in this matchup. Cabal, Shadow Priest, 6 mana Yeti. That's how much he wants to stick board here. And he even has Wave of Apathy in hand to pair alongside that as well for a more defensive option, more tempo swingy option later on. He's just dropping it. He wants it in play.
Guess what I'm going to suggest this turn, Saul?
Is it Skull of Gul'dan?
It is. Especially with the Eldrazi Warblades now, there's actually a benefit to drawing more cards because there's still 2 Twin Slice in the list that can be huge, not only for pushing damage, but for also stabilizing his own health. Nothing really cleans this board up nicely apart from like Shard Shatter, Soul Shear, or Hero Power Trade, which both look pretty weak as far as I'm concerned.
The disdain in your voice as you got to the end of that sentence. Hero Power and Trade?
I know, yeah. I've seen Trade, I think, once this game, and it already hurt me, so I can't deal with twice.
Oh, he traded a bunch. I was saying, like, he put so much damage into minions at the start of the game because the start was so aggressive from Warma. He was kind of forced to, though. Like, absolutely no judgment on that.
That's it, right? Those, I don't mind if it's literally, well, if I don't trade, I'm just going to die.
Yeah.
But when it's like these optional trades, Mana burn, actually, though, from the One Maker is huge, and you can see Warma unhappy now that he can't play his Murozond.
Yeah, so we didn't really get to it, but that was going to be my counterpoint when you finished your Skull of Gul'dan spiel, is do you really want to do that into your opponent's Murozond turn? Because you're going to Skull, you're going to play a bunch of cheap cards, and then potentially that just all comes flying back at you on the other side from the Murozond. So that is what that reaction was about from Warma, but he specifically wanted to counterpunch this with Murozond this turn, and now doesn't have the opportunity to.
Yeah, I do think there was an option for Swidz there, though, that I think you can Skull and not play a ton of cards that turn, even if you draw them. Like I said, it does depend on the cards, of course, but if it's Twin Slices and stuff, you could save those for the Warblades anyway, so there was an opportunity to play around it, but of course the Mana Burn just ticks all those boxes immediately.
Even then, I'd still happily take 8 mana 8/8 draw 3 as the Priest player in this position.
Sure. So now Swidz is going to start counting, or at least carry on counting, should I say. Does require 2 turns unless you see something I don't, Subtle.
No, I'm not piecing it together myself, so it does look like it needs to go over 2 turns. The danger again is that Warblades. I have to be very careful with that card here once you've hit the late game. That's probably part of his second turn where he's planning to actually kill the opponent as opposed to the first one where it can be Murozonded and blow up the 2-turn lethal setup. Well, he's going to go for it now. So I would hope that the added damage to this just comes from Soul Shard Lapidary, which cannot be copied from the opponent. Yep, seems fine.
Nice heal boost as well, making them a lot safer versus these 2 Cabal Shadow Priests.
Oh.
Yeah, hold on. There is just Apotheosis, Shadow of Death. Those are pretty good cards.
They are.
There we go.
It's a really huge 2-turn payoff, though, right? If you were to Alexstrasza yourself here and then live, and then get to Apotheosis the Alexstrasza on the following turn, that's incredibly greedy, but it's such a huge payoff. He just ends up at 15 here anyway. It's now 2, 4, 6, 7, 10. One Maker can add 4 with another Twin Slice. Still be a little bit off.
I grow.
Well, 12 with the hero power and the One Maker attacking, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's true, yeah. So Twin Slice from the One Maker would actually be enough here, right?
Is there enough?
2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Yeah, I think so.
I mean, even with this hand, I wouldn't see why you wouldn't start with a One Maker anyway, right? Even if you got Silence.
Well, you're kind of just betting the game on that straight up at that point, right? Whereas Swidz here is looking for a clear play where he can get multiple turns.
Time grows short.
Are you betting the game if you just play a Wand Maker? What is that going to stop him doing this?
I guess that's true, yeah. I mean,
if you just play a Wand Maker, if you don't get it,
you raise a good point.
Turn,
yeah.
Like,
it's coming down here anyway.
Magic? Oh. Yeah, I don't know. I think I would have started with, even if he loses the 2-2, okay, it's not like optimal, but it could have literally won the game at that point.
Right.
Or at least helped out a lot. Like I said, Consume Magic would have been sick. Twin Slice, of course, fantastic. Even another Mana Burn might have been very good that turn.
Right.
Your mind is not your own.
Now this is the scary moment, though, where the game might start to slip away, and although there is the Sociologist in hand for Swidz, there's Soul Mirror for Warma, so that pretty much just solves that.
Yep.
Most of the time, at least.
Dance.
Would love a face attack here from Warma. That's where he wants to aim this. I think on 21, he should feel more than safe.
It's weird how mentalities can differ, right? Because I would potentially argue that if you're at 21 and you feel safe, then there's a reason you feel safe that you can outlast all the damage at that point, right? So just why not trade and make things long and excruciating for your opponent?
Because I'm not an evil person, Sol. Honestly, one of the few things I was thinking of there, if you wanted to be maybe have a little bit more of that mindset, is like, is Wave of Apathy just fine this turn? Is it going to get much better this game if you just Wave of Apathy the 3/2?
Right.
And just be like, well, now you've got a one attack minion that does nothing anyway, you know. Relatively weak militia as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this was the other argument for Swidz' play on the previous turn, or at least a reason why he was very tunneled on making the play that he made, apparently, is that he really wanted to get these soul shards loaded up, which is what he did with the double soul shear, to make sure he was able to drop militia. And this is kind of his final push at this point, right? Like, this is his last go to say, okay, maybe I stick a board here, and that's actually good enough to get the job done. Certainly see that it will not be, though. 8-8, 5-5, Wave of Apathy, the board. Is that what's happening?
Looks reasonable. And that's what makes Wave just insane, isn't it? It's so close to just a Frost Nova. It's absurd. Like, how was this board not soul mirrored? You know, in like normal world, right? It's like a great soul mirror, it clears everything up. Warma would still be winning on board. Nah, it's all right. Wave of Apathy, it'll be fine. Don't worry. It's so powerful.
Yeah, I like this trade. I think this is probably fairly responsible, all things considered. All he needs is the 8-8 to stick in most worlds.
Whoa.
Oh, hello.
Woo!
Hello!
I was just gonna say, he has half a good turn here with his play dance. He just needs the other half, which is the second twin slice.
We're out here playing video games again, Raven. It's happening.
Yeah. The only okay, it's a little bit close, isn't it? Huh. Double jump as well. I do believe he has another skull, right?
He does, yeah.
And he has consume. He still has consume magic too. Now the slight issue is, one, that's a ton of damage, but two, these are going to pop back up to like a threat again because of that wave.
Yeah, and now
suddenly
Warma's in a position where he cannot both raise dead and where he cannot both soul mirror and Alexstrasza. So he has to leave himself a little bit vulnerable here to potential damage.
I like the soul mirror after seeing double twin slice and no weapon equipped though. I do like that being the choice and not like the Alexstrasza hope kind of thing, which looks way, way, way worse.
Right. Swidz still had Altruist in his deck, he still had Glavebound in his deck, he still had Soul Shard Lapidary with one Soul Fragment exactly in his deck as well.
Can just do this into Skull half the time, right? He gets it.
Alas, poor Warlock.
Hello?
Okay. I mean, would you just hero power into Mana Feeder this turn just for one more card draw?
Yes.
Or is that
3 natural cards remaining? One of them is Lapidary, one of them is Glavebound Adept. You kind of want as many of those as possible in your hand for next turn, right? Just to try and end the game.
And the thing is, you're going to draw them anyway, so it's like the whole playing through Altruist doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because he could even go the other way with his hand, right? And go actually like Altruist Kane and go that way if he needed to. So I think this draw, this draw's just good no matter which way you look at it. Renew. He's dead.
That Renew is huge. Raise dead first because it's free with the recovery from Alexstrasza, but then the Renew to throw on top of it as well. So insane.
Is this just penance? Plague. Okay, so
Plague.
Warma will know there's a selection of minions left, mainly as the damage, right?
Yeah.
So is Plague just the final get gone?
Yeah,
I actually, this is just good recognition of what's actually going on in this game, or what can happen in this game.
I hope Swidz has been counting. We had to talk about Warma's turn, but Swidz should have been counting his outs. He had 2 cards remaining, Lapidary and Adept. He appears to be counting now. I'm disappointed.
It's not enough, right? Unless I'm not counting right.
Soul Shard through here. You can get the Blade Dance through.
Which he needs to actually kill the minion with hero power as well.
Yeah.
Oh, he does, okay, he doesn't need to use hero power, but
He doesn't need to use hero power. Yeah, alright, this is clean.
Job's done.
Oh, this game's actually so close. What?
Mm-hmm. So now the final cards are 4 Soul Fragments, 1 Gladebound Adept. So the Gladebound Adept gets drawn, and hero power, Kane, and Gladebound are all possible in the same turn here. So if Warma plays Plague of Death here, I'm pretty sure he knows his fate, or at least can work it out if he really wants to dig into it. So is there a different solution instead? Like some kind of Spellkin and Wandmaker combination where you hit away Vapthi and Radiance and keep yourself alive?
I don't think... Well, okay, yeah. In Strange Worlds, maybe. But yeah, that was just a tough one. I think if it was guaranteed as well, that was kind of rough there for Warma. And a game that was so close. But that's the big deal, right? And that's why I just love seeing the Skull Keep in that matchup. If you just draw enough cards, you have so much extra damage to actually kill the priest. It's super important, and you see there, if Swidz didn't even have access to the, if the double jump wasn't into the skull, then that's a big deal, right? And if you didn't get hold of that early enough, that could have slowed the game down enough for Warma to go back up to 30. But you see there, like, Warma healed for a ton that game, and it still just was not enough if the Demon Hunter can draw. So really close game there. And again, I just love that matchup. I love casting it. I don't mind playing it, although I normally lose. But I really enjoy casting that matchup. It's super fun. It's super intricate as well.
Yeah, I do think one of the things that ended up being really crucial there in the mid game was that mana burn, though, because that could suddenly have been a completely different story. There's a huge board generated with 3 cards being drawn at a position where Warma was very, very comfortable in the state of the game. Suddenly, that means that, you know, Warma might have seen his Galakron for 5 more armor. He could have seen something that generated him another big Taunt Dragon. He could have hit his other Renew or a Penance or whatever else that could have just made that tiny bit of difference that he needed. He was just a little bit short towards the end.
Yeah, and I also do just wonder, although I liked it, if that turn instead was a Soul Mirror into the Militia, and then suddenly, you know, you play that the other way around, that might have been good enough to get rid, because it did end up pushing a ton of damage there. So anyway, close game overall, but we are going to be moving on to our next game, and Swidz is going to be on this Rogue Sottle, and again, just a fairly unique build of it. Swidz putting his own spin on this one.
Yeah, he does march to the beat of his own drum a little bit here and there, and it's not wildly different from what we expect to see from most people. He has also moved to Eviscerate over to Vendetta, which most people are doing now these days, but it's the top end of his deck, which is a little bit unique, with the Faceless Corruptor, the Jandis, and the Flick all in there at the same time. So that is, you know, I said the word greedy earlier. It's still obviously an incredibly low-curve deck, but in comparison to some of the slimmest versions, has just got all of that extra top end piled in on top.
Yeah, I think Faceless Corrupt is a really funny card right now because it didn't get really worse. You know, like, the card's still good. It was played a lot of places as well, but, you know, before the expansion, but it's just like, people have just gone different routes, and then also, you know, Highlander Hunter isn't played as often, so you don't see that as much, and so on. So it's just weird that the card is still really good, it's just not finding slots anymore, which is so odd.
That's the thing, right? Like, I don't think we saw that much Faceless Corruptor in that many decks. We just saw a lot of Highlander Hunter, and they played Desert Spear, right? Which suddenly made Faceless Corruptor pretty insane.
The other Warma off to a lightning start once again, sticking this Sethic. Pretty solid. Now having another one, wow.
There's the ambush.
That is the, I believe, the one of ambush. 1 ambush, 2 plagiarize, and 2 dirty tricks.
And then immediately, first spell generated with Shadow Word Pain, and oh my god, it's over. It's over. Alert the authorities.
Insane. Stubble in a fire as well.
We can't.
Brave Ruin, yeah, let's get more Sethics, why not?
We just combo Priest now. This is a really nice clear, though, with the Faceless Corruptor. We talked about it a lot already, and the unique tech card from Swidz coming in monstrously clutch. Very few cards, in fact, probably 0 cards in the base build of Rogue that most people are playing right now would have been able to answer or recover from that situation.
If that wasn't the play that turn for whatever, he hadn't drawn it, whatever reason, we would have literally seen Swidz coin out Flick next turn to deal with the setting. Yep, right. Like, oh. And even though Warma got, shut down, I'll say, he is still in a commanding position right now, at least as far as I see. Got the board back again. Got still a good selection of cards. That Grave Rune could come in pretty handy as well to continue to stick board here.
Plagiarize Miscreant over the Jandis here. Turning down Jandis on curve? Rarely seen?
Well, it's tough, right? Because it all depends on what Jandis summons, but to me, it just looks like a 5-drop on 5 because 2 of the minions die. It does, of course, cause Warma to trade off, but having 2 of them just auto-dead most of the time feels pretty bad.
How much mana would a 1/4 cost,
Let
Raven?
me change your mind.
How much mana would a 1/4 cost?
Yeah.
Is this some kind of weird question?
No, you said he'd essentially be playing a 5-drop on 5, but instead he played a 1/4.
Oh, sure, but I think getting the play dries up is pretty important too.
Okay.
I think the play dries could have been pretty good.
Okay. I remain unconvinced.
See, look at this! He swapped minions with his opponent, and arguably he got the better one.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely got the better one.
Yeah. Now that it's been played, of course, I mean.
Yeah.
Before someone's like, well, actually, I think you can question whether 2 lackeys is better than a Sethic on average.
Dance, puppet.
No, it's my Sethic! What? How has Warma got this board, Sol? Why is this like a 6-minion board suddenly against Rogue? What's happened?
So what happened, Raven, is he curved Sethic into Apotheosis, into second Sethic, into Power Word Shield, into Raise Dead his 2 Sethics. Does that elucidate the situation for you?
Thanks for the update.
Okay.
I was paying attention, though. I'm just waiting for Swidz to actually flick these Sethics and just be like, be gone!
Like, there's a freaking 5/1 in play, though.
Yeah,
Like,
but
that's the
right?
problem.
Warma just has endless cards otherwise. That's the big problem.
Yeah.
Priest doesn't need card draw if it's going to just create them all in hand.
Embalming Ritual, Grave Rune.
Ooh. Okay, I was actually looking at Galacron.
I can go Galacron, sure. Yeah, fine. Happy with
I
this.
think the odds on you being able to land Grave Rune next turn is incredibly high anyway. Oh, look at the damage. What is going on?
Needs help.
I think,
Needs big help. None of those really seem to fit the bill. Goes for contract, lands on lucrative. 2 coins in most worlds with Edwin in hand right now might seem pretty appealing, but it's just way too slow a removal spell at this point.
I think Priest did get some like Tempo Priest cards recently, but I don't think this is what the team had in mind. It's just the Sethic curve.
Yeah, I mean, Sethic is an insane Hearthstone card. You can see the decks right now aren't really built to support it. Like, we're seeing Sethic get run in decks that sometimes don't even have penance in them, right? Like, it's Sethic and Apotheosis, and that's it, right? Pretty much. Otherwise, you're just Shadow of Deathing your opponent's minions, or you're playing something that you picked up off a Renew, or whatever else. Like, it's not the optimal build for a Sethic Veilweaver, but still Sethic Veilweaver is in basically every priest deck. It's just a good card.
Just look at the amount of times Renew is done to just make more cards. Yeah. It's not even healing anything, right? It's just Sethic, Renew, whatever. It's just used as a target card, like that sometimes has benefit. Crazy. Rolling Fireball does some level of work, still manages to push an additional 4. Lethal with Holy Nova and Inner Fire. The old Holy Nova Inner Fire combo is going to give Warma a victory number 2 here. Over Swidz for now, making him 1 game away from taking the series. And what an odd game of Hearthstone, Sottle, honestly. Like, you don't see Priest do that often.
Evil Miscreant looking you dead in the eye now, Raven, asking who's the better minion now, huh? talk him down
Yeah,
earlier.
you didn't even want to play it, Subtle.
I didn't. I didn't. And so I wouldn't have ended up getting it stolen and having it inner fired back at him in the face. Strictly better.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Honestly, a very weird game there, but you do get that because Priest does have the ability, and it's one of the issues with this build of Rogue from Swidz and many other players. This is not aimed specifically at Swidz in any means, but the build is a little bit harder to deal with these wide boards early on. Doesn't happen often from Priest, but with a lack of weapons, for example, with a lack of actually like early sticky minions outside of just a crazy questing turn or Van Cleef, obviously, you just don't really have the ability to fight for a board that's like just there. So you can get run down a little bit. I think the key there was Warma kept it up. Normally Priest falls off in the mid game, right, and doesn't quite hold on to the board for long enough. But with the steals available from both the Cabal minions, it just kept on going and ended the game. So pretty strong one from Warma.
Yeah, and I do want to revisit that point quickly because that was my concern with the Galakron turn, is that it was very, very low tempo in comparison to what he could have done otherwise with the Grave Rune or whatever else. Because say he didn't just have lethal that turn, right? Like say Swidz had 1 more health or 2 more health or however much he needed. His push was kind of done at that point. The rest of his hand was really not pushing very hard. So that game could have then reset to a particularly like grindy point. And Galakron to me did feel a little bit slow in that scenario, but he was able still to get over the line with that inner fire in the end. So puts himself now in a good position in the series.
Yeah, it's really tough, isn't it? Because I was so close to nearly just saying, oh, well, if he hadn't have Galakron he didn't even need the Nova, right? Because he could heal his own minion. But if he hadn't have Galakron then the 4/4 would have taken a trade, and then it might not have been lethal anyway, right?
Well, not if you Grave Runed the 5/1 and then traded into it.
Oh, sure, okay. If you wanted to Grave Rune instead, then yes, of course. But yeah, I do agree there was a point where it could have slipped away there, but it did not. Warma, and that does mean he only has his mage to take a win with here. And again, this is more of the, I'm gonna say, slightly older build of mage, but it's honestly, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, at least from where I'm sat, Saul, because you know this, but I'm still a fan of just the Conjurer's Coin in the list. I understand why people don't run it, but as honestly like one of the cards that still makes some of the biggest impacts in the games it is not run, then I think it's an absolutely fine inclusion in the list.
Yeah, still a lot of debate over the last 3, 4, 5 cards in Tempo Mage, and I really don't even think we're going to come to an agreement by the very end of this expansion cycle. Like, I think people will still be hotly debating whether Shemvala should be in the deck, whether Jandis should be in the deck, whether Arcane Intellect or Spellkins and Arcane Breath should be in the deck. I think all of these points are going to be up for discussion. Data from the Masters Tour last weekend shows that the Cobalt Spellkin Arcane Breath build was the most successful, but it did have a smaller sample size of players, so you can choose not to trust that sample if you want to. But Warma here on, as Raven called it, the slightly old school build of Natural Conjurer's Calling and Arcane Intellect in the deck instead.
Yep, the data from my run with the Spellkin build shows that it was not that great. For my own personal stats, so think of that what you will. Most importantly, though, post mulligan here for Warma, and this is a pretty solid opening hand. Not particularly because Mana Giant's always good in the opening hand, but with these 3 cards supporting it, looks pretty solid from where I'm looking here, Sottle. But what do you make of Swidz' pre-mulligan hand here? That.
Yeah, I mean, Wild Growth, Guardian Animals, obviously is a very, very smooth curve. If you put Wild Growth in your deck, obviously you have to keep it. I'm still somewhat unconvinced that Wild Growth is a good enough card to justify a spot in the deck when, Overgrowth exists alongside it. But certainly when you are building your deck in this way and then your mulligan shows you Wild Growth, Guardian Animals, I think you're feeling pretty happy.
Was there ever a reason for Swidz to keep the Anubisath there? Because it does combo with his Guardian Animals to make it that much stronger, or is that just adventurous at this point?
Yeah, it would seem adventurous. Like, Anubisath is never a card that you want in your hand for long periods of time. You'd much rather play Guardian Animals or play Overflow, and then draw it off your Twilight Runner, or draw it from the Overflow, right, and then dump it immediately. Yep.
That's a good point, though. Switz's build, we've not talked a lot about it, but it has 1 Mount Seller, 1 Survival of the Fittest, but then it also has these 2 Anubisath Defenders and the Living Dragon Breath, which could come into some great usage in this game specifically. And of course, He's a broom gamer, so there's a double broomstick in here as well.
And then after the mulligan, consecutive lightning blooms end up getting drawn here, which means Swidz just decides to immediately rip the guardian animals and tank his dead turn right now.
You still trade with the runner, right? Oh, okay. Swidz chooses not to. Honestly, I always make that trade with the runner personally because I just want more cards. I don't even care about any kind of value, and there's a chance that this runner gets removed before it can get the thing. But do you have any strong opinions on that turn? Or that specific play?
I think I would have gone for it. I think I would have taken the attack, personally. Although, I'm seeing some disagreement here on whether there's a devolving missiles in Warma's deck or not, because it wasn't in the list we showed on screen, but it is on the list I'm seeing on the website right now. I'm a little bit confused.
Yeah, it does appear to be on the list I'm looking at. So, yeah, I'm going to assume that the list I'm looking at is correct, because it's the one I'm looking at. So. Really, deep understanding there. But yeah, it does look like there's the one devolving missiles in there for me, but we'll have to see.
But that's the big issue, right? It's the only real card, because Firebrand isn't really played most of the time anymore, so it's not really something you have to worry about, and even then you've got so much health on board with the additional Thresher as well, that's probably not an issue. The scarier thing is certainly a devolving missiles there, so I imagine that's a big factor. And the fact that Swidz chose not to attack, I'm inclined to believe that there actually isn't one in the deck, just based on that as a read.
I see one, Sol. What are you on about?
Oh, well, fair enough.
No, it's from Cyclone.
I know.
Yeah, I honestly, I think whether there was or wasn't, I'm always maybe overly terrified of one being generated anyway. Or something going wrong. So I would have liked to see the draw there, but regardless, Swidz did get away with it. Got the card draw, and he now has mana to actually play with, unlike his previous turn. Has to be Wild Growth this turn, though, right? He's put it off on his turn 3 to get that Guardian Animals out. He needs to start getting this ramp going.
Yeah, completely agree.
I mean, he did have the option to just go Twilight Runner there, but I just don't think it's needed. I think with the cards he has in hand, he's got more than enough like game-ending potential, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was curious going all the way back when he did just rip the double bloom immediately as to whether that was the best way to play the curve, because it delayed the wild growth for so long with the dead turn that he then ended up having, and it was just so much like overkill in terms of the rush effect that he actually had on the board. Obviously, he plays 2 giant minions immediately, and that's insane. But it felt like he was never going to fall behind there if he took maybe 1 or 2 turns more, split up the lightning blooms, potentially just played out his wild growth naturally.
So now with facing down a Mana Giant, I was going to just weigh up whether it's just overgrowth anyway to really go big on the ramp. But with this Innovate, it does mean he can generate a selection of beasts and rush them with the broom. So there is a good chance he kills this. My only question sort of is like, does he always have to kill this? I think there might be some worlds in which he leaves it up.
I think because he has access to the broom here, it's just so clean to be able to kill it. Obviously, depending on the breakpoints of the particular beast he got, which ended up being terrible. But he does end up fully respecting it here as well. And remember, this is the natural Conjurer's Calling build of the deck. We did talk about that extensively at the start, which is the biggest reason, I would say, to end up trading with the Mana Giant there.
Well, not the best I've ever seen, but still, just a good chunk of minions. I think if this was, if Swidz had ramped a little bit earlier in the game and was sitting near 10 mana or going into 10 mana, there was a strong argument for not trading, saying, well, I'm just going to survive on the fittest anyway next turn and win.
Right.
But yeah, a little bit off there because he delayed that wild growth so much. Another Devolving Frost Nova or Brain Freeze. Tough one to choose, considering he couldn't actually use any of them this turn anyway. He'd end up going for the Devolving Missiles, though.
Into the 2-1. Play your Overflow. Go again.
Again! Oh, you like the broom this turn.
Again, will involve what beasts are going to end up coming out. Now that we see an Emperor Cobra already, yes, I love the Broom Raven.
Would you actually trade the Emperor Cobra here? What if he doesn't? What if he just plays Nature Studies? Yeah, Nature Studies and plays Survival of the Fittest.
Survival of the Fittest next turn.
Yeah, I'm a
gamble with
huge
that.
fan of that, actually. Yeah. Leave everything on board, it's fine.
Yeah, seems very reasonable.
Oh, even got a Death Rattle. That's huge. I embark. Nice.
Okay.
Yep. Nice setup there for Swidz, and Warma has to do a lot of work
Well,
to defend against this.
he drew the right card from his deck in order to get a lot of work done this turn.
Wait a minute. There's a prime.
This evocation is going to have to be money.
Well, that's Ray of Frost. That can help.
Cram Session to draw. Ice Barrier. It's just one of those evocations where it's just too many secrets to actually do anything immediately impactful, though. That's the problem.
Oh. And then must... this is another tough decision, right? Does Warma use these Ray of Frost to kill minions or to stall them? Because if there's Living Dragon Breath just drawn off the top, plus, I don't know, so obviously it means he can't play it with Survival of the Fittest, but just in general, these freezes could have done close to nothing if the draw is Living Dragon Breath.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a tough decision.
Well, I think you know in Warma's position what's up, right? Like, when your opponent plays a turn, plays a Mount Seller turn that's play a bunch of spells and then play Nature Studies dead last going into 9 mana next turn, I'm pretty sure you know what's up in that position, right? You know that Survival of the Fittest is coming. So for that reason, I love the fact that he's played a secret this turn. It's also a secret that Swidz can't check with his 1 minion that's he's allowed to attack with. So he's gone for the Mirror Entity here over the Ice Barrier that he could have played. Because now all Swidz can do this turn in terms of his most powerful play is just to play the Survival of the Fittest, which obviously he can't do if he's super fearful of the counterspell.
Okay, hear me out. What if he plays it anyway?
I mean, sure.
Well, if it's counterspell, he can at worst Ironbark the 1/2 and trade it into the Apprentice.
Yep.
I think that's a fine backup plan with insane payoff if it isn't counterspell.
I agree with you.
So does Swidz by the looks of things. Gets it off. That's huge. And now the evocation turn has gone. Right, Warma used it last turn unless he generates an additional one.
Someday I'll be just like you. Oh, it says explode.
Uh-huh.
Just to dig for Nova.
Frost Nova is playable, yep.
Ooh. Does Explosion do much here? Not really.
Not enough, no.
Oh, it says
Can trade and go for missiles as well, though, so it's going to do a chunk of stuff. It's gonna be there.
But there's still this Death Rattle on top of all of that as well. Like, there's still so much to plow through. Never mind the fact that Swidz is getting a Prime in his deck at some point here. Okay, 7-1 goes down, so it's 18 left remaining on board. 1 from the hero power is 19. Ironbark is 20, still showing lethal on the other side.
Yeah, he doesn't know it's not Flame Ward, though, right?
He does, he attacked
Which is a problem.
base last turn with the 1-2, didn't he?
No, he traded the Apprentice, didn't he?
Wasn't that the first thing he did to check for Ice Barrier? I'm pretty sure.
No, because I was talking about he could Ironbark, right? And he still could have done it when he played it.
Oh,
so
yeah,
it was,
you're right. Yeah.
So I don't think he traded. Sorry, I don't think he went face to test it.
Okay. In which case, I think Swid's line here is reasonable if he did not have that information, because he's so far ahead otherwise, right? Just don't throw the game to the Flame Ward.
Exactly, yeah, and I think this is nice. Just clear off the must-kill minions. Even if this turn was your Sarah pass, it would be fine. He has enough, right? With the broom, it just doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Just keep the spell burst intact. Seems reasonable.
Someday I'll be just like you.
Warma's just got to go again.
The problem is, Warma is so on the defensive here.
Yep.
Even if he holds this off, how does he actually win? Like, oh, and he doesn't. There's the concede. I was going to say, it would have to be like exactly prime into raw silliness to actually even deal 30 that game in some way. So, pretty rough one for Warma on the back foot. Swidz, I think, took a different approach with that very early Guardian Animals. Maybe wanted to just say, if this is good enough and he doesn't have the answer, then the game's just over. But I do like the way he, was set up for the nature studies, and I love that he did just go for it there with the with the survival of the fittest. I think it was a tough choice to make, but definitely the right one.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that decision. Coming down there, just no fear. It was a randomly generated secret. Obviously, if there were multiple secrets in that one evocation, it was the best one for the opponent in that situation. There's normally a couple of secrets in there. I think Warma's particular pack was 2 ice barriers and a mirror entity, and he chose to go with the mirror entity. But I think rewinding before that, he just needed the evocation to do more. If you get 3 secrets in there, it's probably not going to be able to react to the board state immediately as he really needed it to do in that scenario. And it was just too aggressive a start with the Giant Guardian Animals curve into the Wild Growth, and then just the Mount Seller coming out for the board clear. Just way too much to keep up with from the Tempo Mage.
Yeah, and now it's going to be the Mage once again here from Warma going up against Swidz's Rogue. So, again, maybe a bit of a different matchup now that Swidz does have that flick. He does have the Faceless Corruptor as well. So he has at least more mid-game ways to deal with awkward boards, especially if that flick can land on a Mana Giant. Because if that Mana Giant is just played out from Warma, it is susceptible to being removed. And then suddenly, that Conjurer's Calling looks significantly worse.
Swidz here holding on to the Questing Adventurer backstab combo on coin, which does have high potential. A lot of great backstab targets in the early game that you could create a very nice swing turn with. Warma looks like he is considering very hard here, though. I imagine you want to mulligan this for a much quicker opening than what you're seeing here. Yeah, that looks much more like it.
Yeah, that's what I would have done, but honestly, some of the Mage mulligans I've seen continue to confuse me, because there are some cards I feel like I would never keep that some players do in certain situations, and it is tough to get a handle on because your game plan can be so varied based on just even the first couple of turns.
Right.
That, some cards do look better in some mulligans than others, and that is just based on what your opponent does as much as what you do, so kind of hard to keep track of sometimes. I don't think there's a set rule all of the time, but that was definitely a good one.
Warma holds back on the lab partner on turn 1 in order to combo the One Thief, but again, these are some pretty ugly options. Would have loved another additional 1-mana spell here to go along with this hand, just to be able to turbo out this Cyclone as quick as possible with the Apprentice. But not only are these more expensive than that, they're also extremely mediocre.
I do like Polymorph. You are against this rogue list that is looking at Questing Adventurers and Van Cleef. So I think I'd just like a card in my hand that can just say hard no to one of those minions. Warma disagrees, though, and does go for that Mirror Entity instead. My only worry is, Mirror Entity, just there's so much rubbish that Rogue plays.
Agreed.
Is that actually going to get you anything? Like, 1-2 or 1-4? Is that... I don't know. For me, Polymorph as a backup plan looked way, way better there.
Swidz already very much hit decision time here. Every play he would make here has pretty serious implications over at least the next 3 or 4 turns. He can just play Raw Secret, which is probably the lowest tempo initially, and can end up conceding quite a lot of board. Then there was various middle grounds between that and what he ended up doing. Because even if he just coins Miscreant, he's devaluing the questing adventurer that he kept in his opening hand, right, alongside that backstab. But going all the way through to the Miscreant and the backstab here, that leaves his questing adventurer perhaps a little bit stranded just for a turn or two. Obviously, he does get a lot of that value back from the lackeys later on. Another strange decision on Warma's side to just jam Mirror Entity into the turn where you know your opponent has 2 lackeys in hand.
Yeah, I don't know what the entity was ever expected to achieve, because it's not like it's even against rogue, like super high level mind games, right? It's not like, you know, you're against druid where they have to think, oh, is this overgrowth going to be counterspelled and stuff like that, right? It's like rogue's like, well, okay, I can just dump out this bad minion, test for this, attack face because there was a miscreant already up, and test so many of the secrets so quickly. It seemed like it was always going to be pretty miserable.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Swidz played exactly the same turn as he would have done if he wasn't dealing with the secret on, on the previous turn.
Yeah. Now, though, a few options, and these are the tough ones. There's an immediate turn that's very mediocre with the Apprentice Mana Cyclone with double Ray of Frost. There's also the chance of like holding one more turn to see if there's Apprentice Shambhala plus Expel. But then there's the question of, well, what if you just try and do both and actually just use the Mana Cyclone to get more spells for the Shambhala, or at least as many.
There's the threat of the secret here as well, right? Because you don't want to go like Apprentice Ray Cyclone and then boom, it was plagiarized the whole time, and they just get to bust that straight back at you. And even just the thought of, you know, playing a spell to begin with kind of plays into dirty tricks, and it's very hard to test for any secrets from Warma's side here without hard committing to a play, right? Like if he plays Shambhala, he's kind of hard committed into ambush, and then boom, it ends up being ambush, and he has to blow up one of these Ray of Frost anyway to protect his Shambhala. Really, really tough turn.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna say best, but that doesn't mean most fun or like whatever play. But I think was there actually just like Apprentice first, see what happens, and then maybe even just ping pass and just sack off one of the Apprentice? Is that just ludicrous?
Oh,
you have to.
Can't be saying these things. Sorcerer's Apprentice is a Bloodfen Raptor. Oh, sacrilege.
Hey, look, both those Apprentice reduced that Ray of Frost by the same amount.
That's fair. It's very fair.
And there's only one Ray of Frost there.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, obviously in this scenario, if he'd have played Apprentice first, he could have just happily marched through with the double Ray of Frost Mana Cyclone, having seen the ambush get procced. But yeah, the nightmare scenario is you play Apprentice and then nothing happens, right? Because you've already potentially given your opponent a Sorcerer's Apprentice at that point if it's plagiarized, which even if you don't keep going, is already bad for you.
Is it that bad?
I mean, there's lackeys in hand. You know, there's lackeys to be generated. The deck plays Eviscerates, not just Vendetta.
Yeah, but the deck also plays like double Shadow Step, double Prep, double Backstab. The ambush is gone. Sorry. One of the secrets was already played. You don't know if it's ambush at that point.
Have you ever played, Raven, a Hanar Sorcerer's Apprentice turn? Because I have.
Well, if it's that, you know, some things are just meant to happen, aren't they? So I think that's the approach you've got. Finally, are we going to get to see this quest adventurer? Yes, we are. Also, just when you have a Titanic Lackey, you always have to look to see if there's a quest in turn, because it makes it so much better.
Yeah.
We even see the clap from Swidz. He's happy.
Yep, Swidz vibing. French clap coming out.
Okay, now there's a chance at the double Apprentice, like, trick into everything. But once more, there is a secret, and it could be plagiarized. And then you lose, because you probably get 27th by a quest adventure that turn.
And even worse, this one actually is plagiarized.
For those of you following along at home...
True mastery takes dedication.
Genius way to play around Flick. Not even a slight... Huh.
Nothing. Got what it deserved.
Okay, well, there we go. Oh. Oh, that was funny. It's plagiarized number 2. He's just gonna get back. Wait, he's just setting up for the double Raz lethal on turn 10.
It's cold.
They're going to replay the Raz. Aha, got you.
Surely you just slam this cold blood, right? Probably just considering target. I imagine it is ambusher. Break up the threats a little bit.
I guess, but what are you afraid of? I think I was going to say there was only one good target, because the ambusher, you don't actually want them to like have a even more reason to kill it off. I don't know.
Well, you know your opponent has half a Ray of Frost in hand, so what's the point in putting all of your damage on one minion this turn? That doesn't make any sense, does it?
Right, but I just think that the ambusher is so killable anyway, right? Like, I think there are a lot of potential cards that just take down the ambusher easily because of its 2 health. I think it's fine to put on the question.
But there's certainly a card that you know solves the problem you created. You know it's there because it's Twin Spell.
But it only solves it for 1 turn, right? And there's plagiarize, so if there's a big turn from Warma, Swidz has the same turn back.
If this questing is dead and isn't dead in 2 turns, it doesn't matter whether you've put Cold Blood on it or not.
Sure. Oh. Okay, that's a big turn.
This is a much better looking evocation here. Mirror images, arcane missiles, tome of intellect, even playable this turn. Tome coming down.
Cards for Swidz to hold.
Could do with a little bit of extra help. It's a cram session, okay.
Nice Aldrin actually doing cram session last, because Swidz won't get that right.
I think he was already counting it, and that's potentially why the mirror image was played here as well. Yeah, because he was already counting when he was in like mirror image and tome of intellect world. He was already counting how many his opponent were going to get.
Warma's like, yep, seen all these cards before.
Yep. That one.
Why not, right? Was he going to eviscerate in a 0-2? Swidz? Okay. Can I just point out that's a 0-2?
Explosion. Interesting. Alright, not as destructive on the backswing certainly as it could have been there for the Sorcerer's Cyclone coming back the other way, especially with this Dark Layer in play. Yeah, Swidz does have a very natural ability to be able to take damage on his own turn as Rogue, but the mirror images did kind of put pay to that.
Yeah, the only problem is Warma, very similar to last game, he's got to continue being very defensive, and which he has those tools. But again, outside of exactly just this mana giant that he's managed to get hold of now, like Swidz is still on 26 with a hand full of cards. Like that is going to be very, very tough to deal with only 8 health to play around with. He does have to hold off not only for this turn, but for the foreseeable future right now. If you just go for a flat mana giant here, he is susceptible to that flick as well, which is a pretty huge deal.
Ooh.
Time runs out on me.
I do actually like the fireball pick.
Yeah, he's trying the counter-offensive, which I'm definitely on board with. It's not really a hand that suits the potion, in my mind. Like, potion would be ambitious there with the idea of like sticking a large amount of this board. Yeah. And if you're sticking a large amount of this board, you can just fireball your opponent in the face, right? And just like try and win the game that way. So kind of like the logic.
One of the few things I was thinking about potion normally is like, okay, well if you play giant, you can potion it because it's still good with conjurers. Right, but if you play it and potion it, it's just as dead to flick, if not more so. So it's a little bit scary. Warma, once again, just going to help clear off this board. Swidz knows that there was a Raz in hand, so has to have at least half expected this to happen this turn.
This is an ugly collection of mage spells.
It is, but Switz's turns don't have to be that good right now, right? What reads does he have on the secret? He knows it's not entity, is that it? So he could just do a bit of a tester with a polymorph number 1.
Do you want to burn 4 mana into a potential counter spell here?
Many options.
Ooh.
Did go for it, probably looking at that rolling fireball, but most importantly, he gets to rolling fireball anyway. Doesn't clear as much, but still, he gets to clear this raz.
Yeah. He also wins the race to get this Learn Draconic down, despite technically
that's true,
being half a turn behind on actually getting it in play. I do think he has to like start winning board pretty soon again, because he has used one generated Eviscerate, right? He does still have both of his natural Eviscerates remaining, which I guess you can say he can afford to stall out and wait until he gets those Eviscers, but
right.
It's not something this deck really does naturally, is burst damage, right? Like, they have to win board and connect with minions if they're going to deal with this last 8 damage a lot of the time.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. I just look at Swidz's hand and think he can last almost forever right now.
Sure.
Outside of a prime. Because he still has the cards up. The Raz is still a threat that needs to be answered by Warma, because it will push some level of damage. Obviously not tons of damage. But even now, there could be like even Raz Polymorph on this 6/6 is decent and sets up that the missiles finally clear off this... Oh no, he can actually swing in with the weapon. I forgot he had a charge, yeah. He can just clear off a good chunk of this board. Raz is going to sit there. I like this a lot. Like, even at this point, with the taunt gone, he can actually just like start daggering him in the face, right? Like, this is how close he is to lethal at this point. Oh, well, okay, hold on.
And I was going to make this point, is I do think this idea of, like, you know, I can last here is a potential recipe for disaster against Tempo Mage in particular. Because it doesn't matter how comfortable you think you are against this deck. You are one Apprentice Evocation turn, one Prime turn away from absolute disaster. At all times.
So it'll be like, I just got rid of those! And now they're back! I wonder if this is actually going to be intellect number 2 as well this turn. Any huge reason not to here? It's going to go away anyway. Draw some real cards.
Yeah, there was kind of, I don't know, real big brain plays where you deliberately kill your own Astromancer and then draw the cards after that to maximize your opportunity of getting a prime in your hand that could, like, end the game straight up over the next couple of turns. Because that's the problem, right? I just played my Astromancer. I want to save card draw until after the fact so I can draw my prime. But you have to play the Arcane Intellect that turn. So you're kind of in this weird catch-22. And I think overall, like, killing your own Astromancer there is probably nonsense. But it's certainly a problem that he doesn't really have another push to come down after this. I guess Jandis is one more. He probably has just about enough gas to keep him going from this point, I'd say.
Could even just start off with, excuse me, sorry, the Pharaoh Cat and Evil Miscreant first and still have options for the rest of the turn. Because a couple of lackeys could change the way this game's looking right now quite dramatically for Swidz.
Yeah, one lackey in particular. Oh!
Alrighty then, well suddenly, Arcane Explosion
are big.
is insane!
Those are big, Raven.
Nah, the 4/6 isn't now. If it gets enraged, then it's dead.
Is this the single greatest Arcane Explosion you've ever seen in your life?
I have done one with Malygos, so no, but it's
that
pretty
one was
good.
better.
Yep. Okay. And suddenly, this is once again looking quite tough here for Warma to defend. It's going to be able to push or clear off a good chunk of damage, yeah.
It's a full clear, yeah, because whichever way it was positioned, right, with the illusion always dies and the other 6 health minion has 1 left, so he always knows it's a full clear there. Now
This
questing
refill
number 2.
looking just as dangerous for Swidz once again, yeah.
Give me a quest.
Rush in. Okay.
Yeah.
I was interested to see how he could have gone with that, because he could have actually just popped way more health on that questing. If he just used the lackeys and the Pharaoh Cat instead. There were definitely options there.
Sure.
And it's not like you're expecting like rush minions to kill off this questing. So I wouldn't say you'd overly need that taunt. This does save the Kobold Lackey to go face though. So there is an additional benefit of holding on to at least that one. Funnily enough, would you have ever prepped? That's something that was worthwhile considering.
Possibly, yeah, certainly worth looking at. Obviously, the breakpoints are just really hard to calculate against Mage in particular, because they can basically find a way to deal any breakpoint of damage that you can come up with, right?
I think for me, it was very much the what are you actually going to prep out this game, even in a perfect world? And I don't see him a long list of cards on that list. I think he still has, what, 2 backstabs, 2 shadow steps? And so I guess, like, Aerial Lackey spells is the go-to. Oh, okay, that's a good one. Reborn is such a nightmare for Warma.
I mean,
guess he's got the damage to ping it off, but that just means the game goes even longer, and this dagger's gonna start just killing him. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's
the trade and ping and trade and ping. Then he's never gonna win.
Swidz has essentially no value here, and he is just playing the role of the last attempt at the aggro of just trying to rush that opponent down finally. There's still the Prime remaining, remember, in Warma's deck as well, with 8 cards remaining that could completely blow this game state out, but that is not it. That's the lowest value draw possible, and you see it on Warma's face. Second Violet Spellwing now. Jandis Miracle, is it even possible?
Oh, it's possible. And honestly, is there a great reason not to do it? I think you just go for it. What would be good here? What about the 2/6 Demon? That would be good, right? That deals 1 damage.
Yeah, that'd be pretty solid.
That'd be one of the best ones.
Convincing Infiltrator, Earth Elemental.
Earth
all
Elemental's
the
always
targets.
in the list.
Yeah.
Even, I guess a Rush minion would be good, right, as well.
Yeah, he's going to need like Rush plus Taunt if he's going to have any realistic chance, but no, that is not it.
Absolutely nothing. He's going to go for the potential greatest arcane missiles to ever see the game of Hearthstone, right? I don't know what this arcane missiles can do. It's going to have to be big.
Yeah, it can technically leave him at 1 if all the missiles here are perfect.
I thought they were all going to go face. That is going to be the game, and Warma disappointed with the outcome of that one. That was the final. The Eviscerate finally rocks up to the show just to end the game. Not that Swidz needed it, but Swidz takes the match 3-2. And honestly, Sol, it is an outcome I did not expect. And I think, for me, at least from how I remember it, it felt like the games Warma won were very decisive and were very like strong wins. And then all the other games felt like a bit of a struggle from both players. The games Swidz won did not look too... I'm not saying they weren't clean on Swidz's side, but just closer games overall. But Warma just lost control of it there, and Swidz just doing enough in that game to keep going. And there were some hard turns, especially towards the end there.
Yeah, and I'm starting to sort of wind this back in my mind. I was doing it for the last few turns there for Warma. And sort of looking back at that turn where he actually ended up with the Fireball, which proved largely useless at the time, which I did say I kind of liked at the time. But like thinking about the board state there, you were talking about how the Mana Giant and the Potion didn't really work that well together because of Flick, which is absolutely right. But he did have 2 Mana Cyclones left on that board as well. And I think it might have been reasonable to assume that like he played Giant that turn, and then Swidz's turn is like hard tunneled on dealing with that Giant, right? So like maybe Flick comes down and deals with the Giant, as was the eventuality. And then maybe you can just Cyclone another couple of, Potion another couple of cheap Cyclones to be able to get yourself more options going forward. I don't know whether that would have changed anything significantly, but it's a point I can look at of divergence. I also think Warma played a little bit lower on tempo than he needed to do in some of the late game turns there towards the end, but honestly, that was a long series with a lot of pretty interesting decisions on both sides.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of points where results could have tipped backwards and forwards in basically all 5 of those games up until this point.
Yeah, regardless of, who won in the end, that was a very, very close series overall. I definitely agree. But because it was a long and pretty close series, we are going to take a break before we get ready for what will be our last match of the day. Only managing to do 3 because, as a reminder, unfortunately, Bunny Hopper's ill, so I hope he gets better soon, but he's not able to play today. So we are going to have with Silvername versus Felkane coming up as our last match. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.